I had spent hours preparing for Marcus' promotion party. I put on my best dress, the one I knew he always complimented me on when I wore it, and drove to the venue, my heart a mix of excitement and nerves. The air in the room was lively, buzzing with congratulations and clinking glasses. I scanned the crowd, hoping to catch a glimpse of Marcus, my son-in-law, the man who had grown like a son to me over the years. I had always supported him, stood by him, and yet, tonight would prove just how little that mattered. As I stood near the buffet table, I saw Marcus step up to the microphone, his smile wide and his voice warm as he spoke to the crowd. I expected the usual heartfelt words of gratitude, but then, something changed. He looked straight at me, his smile turning almost mischievous, and he said, "I have to thank someone who has truly been a pillar in my life, my mother-in-law, Betty." A few people chuckled lightly, but before I could register it, Marcus continued, "She's always there for me, and that's great, but sometimes, I wonder if she's trying to stay relevant, you know? Like she just can't let go of the spotlight. Bless her heart, she even tried to outshine me tonight. I mean, who wears a dress like that at a work event?" The laughter that followed felt like daggers piercing my chest. I stood there, frozen, my heart racing, a lump in my throat. It wasn't a joke, it wasn't playful teasing. It was an insult, plain and simple, and it was done in front of all those people, making me the center of attention for all the wrong reasons. I looked around at the crowd, but everyone was too busy laughing, too busy watching, and I realized just how much they were enjoying my discomfort. In that moment, I could feel my blood boil. But I didn't flinch. I didn't make a scene. I just kept my composure, smiled faintly, and took my seat. I had never been one to cause a ruckus. I thought back to all the years I had spent helping Marcus, supporting his career, even taking a back seat at times, all in the name of family. And now, this was how he repaid me? But I wasn't about to let this slide. Not this time. I didn't say anything for the rest of the evening, but the wheels in my mind were turning, the anger simmering, the injustice burning in my chest. The night was far from over, and little did Marcus know, I was about to make a move that would change everything. As the event wound down and the guests started to trickle out, I walked up to him, my heels clicking sharply against the polished floor. "I'm glad you're having a good time, Marcus," I said, my voice steady but with an edge he didn't expect. "But there's something I think you need to know. I've been more than just a spectator in your life, and tonight you crossed a line. But I'm not going to cause a scene. I'll let my actions speak for me." He looked at me, a hint of confusion in his eyes, but before he could say a word, I handed him the envelope. "What's this?" he asked, his voice uncertain now. I gave him a cold smile. "Something you're going to want to look at when you're alone. I think you'll find it enlightening." I turned on my heel and walked away. I didn't need to explain myself. I didn't need to justify my actions. Tonight, Marcus had underestimated me, and he was about to learn exactly what happens when you push someone too far. I woke up the next morning, the weight of the previous night still heavy on my chest. It wasn't the first time I had been humiliated, but it was the first time it had been done so publicly, so deliberately. As I sat down at my kitchen table, I tried to shake off the sting of Marcus's words. I made myself a cup of coffee, the rich aroma filling the room, but it did little to calm the storm brewing inside me. I wasn't angry, not exactly. I was disappointed, yes. But there was something else, something deeper, that told me this wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. The envelope I had given Marcus last night wasn't just a warning. It was a calculated move, a reminder that I was still in control, even if it didn't seem like it. I knew he would open it soon, and I knew what would happen next. I had a plan, one that didn't involve confrontation or yelling. It was simple. Really. Marcus was used to getting away with everything. He thought I was too old, too quiet, too invisible to cause any real trouble. But what he didn't know was that I had learned to be patient, to watch, to wait. As the day went on, I kept myself busy, going about my routine, but in the back of my mind, I was already seeing how things would unfold. I knew Marcus would call me soon, and when he did, I would be ready. Sure enough, around mid-afternoon, my phone rang. I didn't have to look at the caller ID to know who it was. I picked up the phone, my voice calm, steady, as if nothing had happened. "Hello?" I said, the word hanging in the air like a thread waiting to be pulled. "Betty," Marcus began, his voice tight, as if he was trying to hold something back. "What's in that envelope?" I could hear the unease in his tone. I took a deep breath, letting the silence linger for a moment before responding. "I think you should read it, Marcus. You'll understand everything then." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. I could practically hear the wheels turning in his mind as he tried to figure out what exactly he was dealing with. "Betty," he finally said, his voice softer now, almost apologetic, "I didn't mean to upset you. It was just a joke, you know? I thought we were all having a good time." "A joke?" I repeated, letting the word linger in the air. "You humiliated me in front of everyone, Marcus. That wasn't a joke. And I won't let it slide." I could sense his unease growing, but I wasn't finished. I had made my point, but now it was time to make sure he understood the full weight of what he had done. "I've spent years supporting you, Marcus. I've helped you when you needed it, always. But last night, you showed me exactly who you are. And you need to understand something very important. I'm not your punching bag. I'm not someone you can walk all over just because you think I won't fight back." His voice faltered. "Betty, I didn't know it was affecting you like this. I'm sorry, okay? I'll make it up to you. I'll do whatever it takes." I could tell he was backpedaling now, trying to smooth things over. But I wasn't interested in his apologies. I had heard enough. "You can't make it up to me, Marcus," I said, my tone final. "The damage is done. And now, I'm going to take care of it my way." I hung up the phone without waiting for a response, my heart pounding. I knew Marcus was rattled. I had planted the seed of doubt, and now, he would have to deal with the consequences. I didn't need to raise my voice. I didn't need to make a scene. The power was in my hands, and I had made my move. For the rest of the day, I waited. I knew it wouldn't be long before Marcus came to realize just how serious I was. He had underestimated me, and now he would have to face the reality of it. I had my pride, and I wasn't about to let anyone trample on it. When the sun set, I sat back in my chair, feeling a strange sense of calm wash over me. This was just the beginning. Marcus thought he had won. He thought he could make a fool of me and get away with it. But he was wrong. And I was going to make sure he knew it. I sat quietly in my living room, the evening fading into night, as I let the events of the day sink in. Marcus had no idea what he had started, and I could almost hear the wheels turning in his head. I knew he'd be back to apologize, to try and smooth things over. But I wasn't waiting for his apology. I was waiting for him to understand just how far I was willing to go. When the phone rang again later that night, I didn't hesitate to pick it up. I already knew who it was. "Betty, I need to talk to you," Marcus's voice came through, strained. I could tell he was trying to sound calm, but the edge in his tone betrayed him. "We need to clear the air." I didn't rush to respond. I let the silence hang for a moment before speaking. "Clear the air? You humiliated me, Marcus. And now you want to clear the air?" I could hear him take a deep breath on the other end. "I didn't mean for it to go that far. I was just joking around. I thought everyone would laugh. I'm sorry, okay?" His words were rushed, like he was trying to convince himself as much as me. I wasn't moved by his apology. It felt hollow, rehearsed. "You think sorry is enough?" I asked, my voice calm but carrying a sharpness that I knew he could feel. "You think you can just apologize and I'll forget how you made me feel?" "No, Marcus, that's not how this works." There was another pause, and I could hear him fumbling for the right words. "I really didn't know it would hurt you like that. I just thought, what did you think?" I interrupted. "That you could get away with it? That I wouldn't care?" His silence answered me, and I could almost feel him squirming. But I wasn't done. I wasn't finished teaching him the lesson he needed to learn. "You've taken advantage of me for years, Marcus. I've always been there for you, supported you, helped you get ahead. And this is how you repay me? His voice was quieter now, softer, as if he was realizing just how badly he miscalculated. Betty, I know I messed up. Please let me make it right. I didn't answer immediately. I needed him to understand the weight of what he had done. Make it right? I repeated, a small laugh escaping me. You can't make it right, Marcus. You can't undo what you did, and you can't take back the hurt you caused. But you can learn from it. You can start respecting me. There was a long silence, and I could feel him thinking, struggling to find the words that would fix this. But the truth was, it wasn't about the words anymore. It was about his actions. And I wasn't going to let him off the hook so easily. I'll tell you what, I continued, my voice steady. You can start by respecting me as a person. Stop thinking you can treat me however you want just because I'm older. And don't ever think I won't stand up for myself, because I will. The silence on the other end of the line was thick, as if Marcus didn't quite know how to process what I had said. But I wasn't finished. I want you to understand this, Marcus. I don't need your apology. What I need is for you to realize that I'm not going to be your doormat anymore. I'm not going to sit quietly while you walk all over me. And I'm sure as hell not going to let you think you can just brush this under the rug. I get it, he said, his voice now sounding smaller. I really do. Good, I replied. Now you'll have to prove it. I hung up the phone without waiting for a response. I knew he wouldn't have any more excuses, not after that. I had made my point. Marcus might not have been ready to face the truth, but I was. I was done being silent. I was done letting them all think they could push me around because I was getting older. It wasn't about age. It was about respect. And that, I realized, was something I was willing to fight for. The next few days were a blur, but I knew things had shifted. Marcus tried calling several times, but I didn't pick up. I had already said everything I needed to say, and now it was time to let him stew in his own regret. I kept myself busy around the house, but something had changed within me. I wasn't the same woman who had quietly stood in the background, doing everything for everyone, without a word of complaint. No, now I was a woman who had finally found her voice, and I wasn't going to let anyone take that away. It wasn't just about Marcus anymore. It was about me, my worth, and my right to be treated with respect. I wasn't going to let his apology, or anyone else's excuses make me forget that. But then, as the days passed, I found myself feeling an unfamiliar sense of unease. The silence between us was thick, and it made me wonder if I had made a mistake by confronting him. Was I being too harsh? Was this really the right thing to do? Those doubts began to creep in, but I pushed them away. I couldn't afford to second-guess myself. I had made the right decision. And if Marcus was too proud or too stubborn to see it, that was his problem. The next week, I went to a small gathering at a friend's house. It was a quiet evening, just a few familiar faces, and it felt good to be out of the house for a while. As I sat with a glass of wine in hand, chatting with people who actually appreciated my company, I realized just how much I had been missing. The constant feeling of being overlooked, of being expected to stay in the background, had become so normal to me that I hadn't even realized how suffocating it was. I had spent years giving and giving, thinking that was what I was supposed to do. But now, I was starting to understand that it wasn't. It wasn't my job to make everyone else feel comfortable, while I quietly suffered. I deserved more than that. As I left the party later that night, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Marcus. I hesitated before opening it, wondering what he wanted now. I clicked on the message and read his words, Betty, I'm sorry for everything. I shouldn't have said what I did at the party. I was wrong. Can we talk? My first instinct was to ignore him. After all, what had he really done to show he was sorry? But then I stopped myself. I had come this far, and I wasn't going to let him off the hook just because he finally said the words I had been waiting for. No, this time, I was going to make him prove it. I didn't respond right away. Instead, I sat there for a moment, thinking about what I wanted to say. Finally, I typed my reply, I'm not interested in your apologies, Marcus. You've had plenty of chances. If you really want to make things right, show me. Actions speak louder than words. I hit send and set the phone down. There was no need to wait for a response. I had made my stance clear. The next few days felt different. I noticed a shift in Marcus. He was still trying to win me over, but now it felt forced, like he was scrambling for my approval. He called again, but I didn't pick up. He sent me gifts, but I didn't acknowledge them. I wasn't interested in his superficial gestures. If he wanted to make things right, he needed to show me. As I sat in my living room one evening, I thought about everything that had happened. I thought about how far I had come, how much I had changed. I wasn't the woman who would sit quietly anymore, letting others walk all over me. I was strong, I was powerful, and I was no longer afraid to stand up for myself. And that, I realized, was the most important thing of all. Days passed, and the silence between Marcus and me stretched longer than I ever thought possible. Every time my phone buzzed, I expected it to be him, apologizing again, but there was nothing. It seemed like he was trying to figure out his next move, but I wasn't giving him the satisfaction of a response. He had pushed me too far, and now he had to show me that he understood the consequences. The ball was in his court, and I wasn't going to make it easy for him. I spent the next few days reflecting on my choices. I wasn't just angry at Marcus anymore. I was disappointed in myself for allowing things to go on for so long without standing up for myself. But that was in the past. I had found my strength now, and nothing would take it away from me. I had made it clear to Marcus that apologies alone wouldn't cut it. But I was beginning to wonder if he would ever understand. If he would ever take the steps to prove that he truly respected me. And then, just when I least expected it, I got a phone call from Sophie, my daughter. "Mom, we need to talk," she said, her voice tense. "About what?" I asked, trying to keep my tone neutral. "About Marcus," she replied. "I know things have been tense between you two. But I think you should hear him out. He's been really upset, Mom. And I think he's starting to get it." I felt a rush of frustration. Why was Sophie still defending him? After everything Marcus had done, I wasn't sure I wanted to hear his excuses. "Sophie," I said, my voice steady but firm, "I've already heard enough. He humiliated me, and now he needs to show me that he's truly sorry. Words don't mean anything anymore." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "I know, Mom," Sophie said quietly. I think Marcus is trying. I really do. He's been talking about it a lot, and he wants to fix things. Please, just talk to him." Her words hung in the air, and I could tell that she was worried. I knew she didn't want to see us at odds, but I also knew she didn't fully understand why I was so hurt. I wasn't sure I wanted to talk to Marcus yet, but Sophie's plea made me realize something. If I truly wanted things to change, I needed to be the one to make the first move. If I kept waiting for him to come to me, it might never happen. "Fine," I said finally, "I'll talk to him. But he better be serious about this." The next evening, I met Marcus at a quiet cafe. We sat across from each other, the space between us heavy with unspoken words. He looked different than the man who had humiliated me at his party, less confident, more vulnerable. He seemed to be struggling, trying to find the right way to approach this. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he spoke. "Betty," he began, his voice softer than I had ever heard it before, "I've been thinking a lot about what happened. And I realize now how wrong I was. I hurt you. I made you feel small, and I can't take that back. I'm sorry." I looked at him, my gaze steady. I could see that he was genuine in his regret, but I wasn't ready to just accept his words. "Not yet. You're right," I said quietly. "You did hurt me. And I've been holding on to that hurt. But words don't mean anything to me anymore. What I need to see is change. I need to see that you understand what you did and that you're willing to do the work to fix it." He nodded slowly, his eyes not leaving mine. "I understand," he said, his voice full of sincerity. "And I want to make things right. I know I've made mistakes, and I'm ready to do whatever it takes. I could feel the tension in my shoulders begin to ease. It wasn't a perfect apology, but it was a start. It wasn't about me forgiving him right away. It was about him showing that he was willing to put in the effort to rebuild the trust that he had broken. "I'm willing to give you a chance, Marcus," I said, my voice steady. "But you have to prove it. I won't settle for anything less than genuine change." He looked at me, his expression earnest. "I will, Betty. I promise you." And for the first time in a long time, I believed him. Weeks passed, and with each passing day, Marcus kept his promise. It wasn't always easy, and it wasn't always perfect, but I could see the effort he was putting in. He stopped making those offhand comments, and when we saw each other, his tone was respectful. He would check in, not just for superficial reasons, but because he genuinely wanted to know how I was doing. It was a change that, at first, I couldn't quite believe. But as time went on, I began to trust it. One afternoon, he called me again, but this time, it felt different. "Betty, I've been thinking," he said, his voice calm but with a hint of nervousness. "I know I've done a lot to hurt you, and I'm sorry for that. But I've been working on something, and I think it's time we talk about it." I felt a twinge of curiosity. "What's that?" I asked, trying to keep my voice neutral. "I've been talking to Sophie," he said, his voice a little softer now. "And I've realized that I've been taking a lot for granted. Not just with you, but with everyone. I've been so focused on my career and trying to prove myself, I didn't see how much I was neglecting the people who matter the most." I listened, not sure where this was leading. I had heard him apologize before, but this felt more thoughtful, more genuine. "What are you trying to say, Marcus?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. He took a deep breath before answering. "I want to make it right," he said. "I've been thinking about how I can show you that I'm serious about changing, about making things right between us. And I want to start by offering you something I should have done a long time ago." My heart skipped a beat, but I didn't let my emotions show. "What are you offering?" I asked. "I've been talking to Sophie, and we've decided to move forward with something I think will help repair the damage. I want you to come and stay with us for a while, Betty. I think it's time you had your own space, away from all the tension, and we want to make sure you're comfortable. You can take all the time you need to decide, but I really want to show you that we value you, that I value you." I was silent for a moment, processing what he had just said. He wasn't just apologizing anymore, he was offering a solution, a way to show that his actions matched his words. But it wasn't just about the offer. It was about what it meant. He had realized the impact of his behavior, and he was taking responsibility. For the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of hope. Maybe, just maybe, this was the turning point we needed. I had been so focused on how much he had hurt me, but now I saw something different. I saw that Marcus was willing to do more than just apologize. He was willing to take action to make things right. "I appreciate the offer, Marcus," I said after a long pause. "I really do. But it's not about a place to stay. It's about you showing me that you're truly committed to this change. And I think you're on the right path." There was a quiet moment on the other end of the line, and then Marcus spoke again, his voice full of sincerity. "I promise, Betty, I'm committed. And I will prove it to you, every single day." I nodded to myself, feeling a sense of relief. It wasn't going to be easy, and it wasn't going to happen overnight, but this was a start. I could see the shift in Marcus, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like there was a real possibility of reconciliation. It wasn't about forgetting what had happened, it was about moving forward together. As I hung up the phone, I felt a small, cautious smile tug at the corners of my lips. I wasn't ready to let my guard down completely, but for the first time in a long time, I felt like I could trust Marcus again. And that, in itself, was enough. It had been a few weeks since that phone call with Marcus, and as much as I wanted to stay cautious, I could feel myself starting to let my guard down. He kept his word. He didn't just apologize again and let things slide. No, Marcus had been following through with his promises. He was trying. And for the first time and years, I started to feel like maybe, just maybe, things were changing. Sophie had invited me over for dinner one evening. She called to check in on me, and there was an unfamiliar warmth in her voice. It wasn't that we hadn't talked before, but this time, something felt different. I could hear the sincerity in her words when she said, "Mom, I really hope you're doing okay. I know this hasn't been easy for you, but I can tell Marcus is really trying. He's been working on himself, and I think he's finally getting it." I wasn't sure what to say. I had heard the same thing before, people telling me that Marcus was changing, that he was learning, that he was sorry. But something about Sophie's tone made me pause. Maybe it wasn't just about him anymore. Maybe this was the moment to see if I could truly move past all the hurt. When I arrived at their house, Marcus greeted me at the door with a genuine smile. His eyes weren't just empty words anymore. There was something real behind them, something I hadn't seen in a long time. He stepped aside to let me in, and I could see that he had taken the time to make things right. The house was warm and welcoming, the smell of homemade lasagna wafting from the kitchen. It was familiar, but it felt different now, like the air had shifted between us. We sat down for dinner, and Marcus was quiet, thoughtful in his conversation. He didn't try to fill every silence with words, he just listened when I spoke. There was no more tension, no more sense of him trying to impress anyone. It was just easy. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I wasn't walking on eggshells. As we ate, Sophie shared a bit about how things had been going with her work and their family life, and I could hear the love in her voice when she talked about her children. The conversation flowed naturally, and I noticed something I hadn't seen before. There was a new respect between Marcus and me. The awkwardness had started to fade, and though there were still some things that needed healing, I could see that we were both trying to move forward. After dinner, we sat in the living room, and Marcus turned to me, his expression serious. "Betty," he said, his voice low, "I know I've hurt you. I know I've done things that I can't take back, and I understand if it takes time for you to trust me again. But I want you to know that I'm committed to doing better, to being better." His words were simple, but there was a weight to them that I could feel. I looked at him for a long moment, considering his sincerity. "Marcus," I said, my voice steady but soft, "I'm not asking for perfection. I'm not asking for everything to be fixed right away. But I am asking for consistency. I need to see that this change is real, that it's not just words." He nodded, his expression never wavering. "I know," he said quietly. "And I'll prove it every day. I'm here, Betty. I'm really here, and I'm not going anywhere." It wasn't a grand gesture. It wasn't some sweeping promise of never making mistakes again. It was just a simple, honest declaration. And in that moment, I felt like I could breathe a little easier. There was no guarantee that everything would be perfect, that things would magically go back to the way they were. But there was a glimmer of hope, and that, I realized, was enough. The night ended with laughter, with real conversation, and with a sense of peace that I hadn't felt in a long time. As I drove home, I thought about how far we had come, and how much further we still had to go. But for the first time in a long time, I felt hopeful. Hopeful that Marcus could truly change. Hopeful that we could rebuild what had been broken. And most importantly, hopeful that I wasn't alone in this anymore. It had been a few months since that night at Marcus and Sophie's house, and things were slowly but surely changing. I could feel the shift in the air, the weight that had once been on my shoulders now lifting bit by bit. Marcus was different, more present, more aware of his actions. Sophie, too, seemed to be more at ease, and the tension that had once defined our relationship was slowly melting away. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. One evening, Marcus invited me over for dinner again, and this time, I felt no hesitation when I agreed. As I walked into their home, I was greeted by the familiar warmth of the house, but there was something different about it tonight. The usual coldness that had lingered between us was gone, replaced by a quiet, comfortable familiarity. It was like stepping into a new chapter of our relationship, one that I hadn't been sure would come. Dinner was simple but comforting. We talked about everything and nothing, how Sophie's work was going, the kids, the weather. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I had to hold my breath around them. I wasn't walking on eggshells, afraid of what might be said or done. Marcus was quieter than usual, and I could tell he was thinking deeply about something. He cleared his throat and looked at me across the table, his eyes softer than I remembered. "Betty," he said, his voice steady but with an undertone of sincerity, "I know I've made a lot of mistakes. I can never undo what I've done, but I need you to know that I'm doing everything I can to be a better person. Not just for you, but for Sophie, for the kids, and for myself." I looked at him for a long moment, letting his words sink in. There was no grand apology this time, no over-the-top promises. Just a quiet, honest admission of his faults and a real desire to make things right. "Marcus," I said slowly, my voice calm but firm, "it's not about perfection. I don't expect you to be perfect. I just need to see consistency, to know that you're truly trying. That you're not just doing this because you think you should, but because you understand why it matters." He nodded without hesitation. "I get it, Betty. I really do. And I'm not just doing this because it's what you want. I'm doing this because I want to be better. For everyone, but especially for you." His words were simple, but there was something in them that I hadn't heard before: true accountability. I wasn't just hearing what I wanted to hear. I was hearing a man who had finally taken responsibility for his actions. And that, I realized, was enough. We didn't talk about the past for the rest of the evening. We didn't need to. The change wasn't in the words we said, but in the way we were beginning to treat each other. By the time dinner was over, I felt a quiet sense of peace settle in me. It was like a weight had been lifted, not because everything had been fixed, but because I had finally seen the shift in Marcus. He was no longer the man who had humiliated me, the man who took me for granted. He was becoming someone I could respect again, and that was all I had really wanted. As I got up to leave, Marcus stood up with me, his eyes meeting mine one more time. "Thank you for giving me a chance," he said softly. I smiled, the corners of my lips lifting just a little. "Thank you for showing me you deserve it," I replied. As I walked out the door, I felt lighter than I had in years. There was still work to be done, still plenty of healing to come, but for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was moving in the right direction. I wasn't just waiting for things to change anymore. I was seeing the change happen right before my eyes. And that was enough for now. The weeks that followed continued to show me the small changes in Marcus. I had expected some of them: his attempts to show he was making amends, his quieter demeanor, his efforts to make sure I felt included. But what I didn't expect was the way those changes started to shift things within me as well. I wasn't just healing from the past anymore. I was beginning to see him in a new light, and for the first time in years, I felt the weight of resentment lift. One afternoon, I found myself sitting at my kitchen table, reflecting on everything that had happened. The anger, the hurt, the betrayal, everything had seemed so monumental at the time. But now, looking back, I saw how far I had come. And for the first time, I realized that forgiveness wasn't just about giving Marcus a second chance. It was about giving myself one too. The phone rang, breaking my thoughts. It was Marcus. I hesitated for a moment before picking up. "Betty," he said, his voice warm, "I've been thinking about everything. I know we've come a long way, but I need to ask you something. Do you think we can finally move past all of this? Can we really start over?" I didn't answer immediately. His words made me pause because I hadn't expected him to ask for permission. I had expected him to just assume everything was fine because he had made the changes he thought I wanted. But now, he was asking me if we could truly move forward. "Marcus," I said slowly, "it's not about whether we can move past this. It's about whether we want to. It's about whether we can both be honest and open with each other, not just in the moments when things are easy, but when they're hard too." There was a moment of silence, and I could hear him taking in my words. "You're right," he replied. "I know I've made mistakes, but I truly want to make things right. I want to earn your trust, Betty, and I want to prove that I'm not the man I was before." His sincerity in that moment, the quiet honesty in his voice, made something shift inside me. For so long, I had held on to the anger, the bitterness of the betrayal, and the hurt. But now, I saw something different in Marcus. He was genuinely trying, and I realized that I had to decide whether or not I was willing to take that leap of faith with him. I'm not asking for perfection, Marcus, I said, feeling a sense of peace settling over me. I'm not even asking for everything to be perfect. But I need to see that you're committed to this, to being better, not just for me but for yourself as well. I understand, he said, his voice steady. And I'm ready to show you. I'm ready to work for it every day. I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. I had already made my peace with the past. But now, I had to decide if I was ready to move forward with him, not as someone who was constantly watching for the next mistake, but as someone who had let go of the past and was ready to build something new. All right, Marcus, I said quietly, let's see where this goes. But I need you to remember something. It's not just about what you do. It's about what we do together. We're in this together now. There was a soft sigh on the other end of the line. Together, he repeated, almost to himself. I can live with that. I want to live with that. We hung up the phone, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt truly at peace. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. There would still be challenges, there would still be moments of doubt, and there would still be days where I wondered if we could really start over. But for the first time in a long time, I felt like I wasn't walking that road alone anymore. I wasn't just waiting for things to change. I was a part of the change, and so was Marcus. And that, I realized, was all that mattered.